Aim for the Stars, where you're going to meet the stars of today and tomorrow. I'm an actress and model from the East Coast of the United States, and this show is brought to you by Jess TV and Jess FM Radio from Lethbridge, Alberta. I am pleased to introduce my next guest, the multi-talented Michael Gibbons. Michael is a director, producer, cinematographer, acting coach, and writer. He's worked with stars such as James Brolin and John Voight. He was also a director of photography for the hit movie Coyote Ugly and has 40 years of experience, over 40 years in the film industry. So I'm very happy that you could join me today, as well accomplished as you are.
You're very kind. I'm very pleased to be here with you. Thank you.
Of course. So I see that you did write, direct, and do cinematography for the film Angels Camouflage, starring James Brolin. I was wondering, what was that experience like for you?
Oh, please. That was, I just said, that was a wonderful experience. And I got to tell you, when you write a script and then you present it to the actors and you light the set and everything comes together and you watch these people breathe life into what you wrote, oh my gosh, there's nothing like it. There's really nothing like it. And that film did really well. It in the festival market, it won 14 like best pictures and all that good fun in festivals. And you can still see it. It's on Tubi and I think Plex and a few places. But that was just a great experience. I loved it.
That's awesome. So, what were some of the, I guess, advantages and challenges of you being able to wear all of these hats during production?
Okay. The pat answer that I give people, which is meant to be funny, is that, okay, I was the writer. Okay, that's one less person that I needed to argue with. I was the director. That was one less person to argue with, the DP, the producer. I didn't take credit as producer, even though I created the movie. It actually was a different movie, though, honestly. Somebody came to me. There was some guys at a production company that asked me to do a movie. It was a really wonderful movie about a blind football player. And they asked me to do that movie. They had raised, they needed many millions to make it, and they only had like 250,000 when they called me. And so they called me, asked me to do it. I said, this sounds really great. And we worked on it just for a few months, and then they lost their window. So they only had an option on it for a little bit of time. You know, they probably had for a year, and I was like right at the end of it, and they didn't get their money. So they said, hey, let's just go shoot this other script. And it was a script called Coconuts. And they gave me the script, and I just didn't dig it. I didn't like it. It was a humorous movie, and I didn't like the sort of humor. And so then, this is a crazy story, but they eventually called me up after some months went by. They called me up and they said, hey, look, you know, we want to shoot this down in the Florida Keys. Will you go down there with us and location scout? And I thought, well, I don't mind going to the Florida Keys. Sure, I'll go down there with you, but I really don't want to do your movie. And so we get down there. We were in Key Largo in a bar that was used in the movie Key Largo, which really excited me. And so I thought, gosh, really? I was standing on a table and I looked down at the producer, a really wonderful guy. I looked down at him and I said, you know, it's a shame your movie is not about rock and roll and tattoos and stuff instead of this, you know, silly, you know, plot line. And he said, what do you mean? And I said something else about that. And he looked at me and he said, hey, did you ever see that show Rock? And he couldn't even remember the name of it, but I knew what it was. It was Rockstar Supernova. And I said, oh, listen to you. There was a woman, a rock star that was in that was from South Africa. Her name was Delana Robichaud. And I said, you're talking about Delana. I'll tell you what, if you let me do a page one rewrite and let me send it to Delana, if she'll agree to do it, I'll do this movie. And they were like, what? What? I mean, we just want to do this with what money we have. You know, what's that going to cost? I said, I don't know. $1 million. I don't know. And so they agreed to let me do it. I actually was leaving like right after that to go to the Cannes Festival. I went to the Cannes Festival. Well, not really. I was going to shoot a commercial in Europe, and we went to the pre-production meeting. I'm sorry if I'm you probably have more questions for me, but I went to a pre-production meeting and they said, look, we have 2 weeks before we go to camera. We can send you back to the States. The Cannes Festival's going on. We can send you there, or we can, you can hang out in Milan, and because the agency was out of Milan. And I said, that sounds great. Send me to Cannes for a week, and then lock me in a hotel for a week. And I wrote the script. I wrote the script on a legal pad with a pencil, and then went and shot the commercial. We shot the commercial in Prague, and then I flew back to Florida, got in front of these guys, and I said, hey, this is what I'll do. And I told them this, I gave them the pitch, and they're like, okay. And I said, but I want to go shoot a piece of the movie with your $250,000. And they're like, no, no. And I said, yes, let me go shoot a piece of the movie, and we'll use that piece of the movie to go and show investors and show them what this is going to be. And I'll contact Delana and get her in it. And all of that happened. They argued with me, didn't want me to do it. They said, like, shoot a trailer. And I said, the trailer's got all the best bits in it. I can shoot a horror trailer as like, a guy pulling a bloody axe across a kitchen floor. And that's a good trailer for a horror film. But this is a rock and roll drama. No, I have to shoot this. I wrote some scenes that would happen in the desert out in California at the beginning of the movie. I said, let's go shoot that, because all we need after that is Delana. We don't need all the other people that'll be involved with us. Go shoot that. I talked him into it. We went and shot it, and I raised $3.5 million to go make the movie. And this was back in 2009 when $3.5 million was okay. And we made the movie, and it's delightful. Please go look at it.
Wow, it's really so cool, and knowing what goes on, I guess, behind the scenes of what goes into like making even before a movie gets made.
Yeah, there's a lot that happens, and things happen. It's like I just got approached by this wonderful writer that writes novels in Italy, and she didn't speak English, so her agent called me up and asked me would I be interested in this, and they gave me the pitch of what it's about. And what I loved about it is a really wonderful story, but it's 3 books that have actually already been made as a play, and the play is very popular. And so to receive the books in the next couple of days, and I'm liable to do it, and I got a bunch of things that I'm working on that are looking good.
Well,
so anyway, yeah, there's always these crazy stories, and how you raise money for a movie is always, it's the worst part of movie making, but there's so many crazy stories that come out of it.
Oh, absolutely. All right. So did you know during the production of Coyote Ugly that this was going to be a hit with audiences all around the world?
I thought it was a great story. I need to just set you straight on something. I was not the DP on the film. I was the director of the second unit, and I DP'd the second unit. So I did that. And honestly, I wasn't there with most of the people. They had me shooting things the second unit does, drive-bys. I shot scenes in New York while they were shooting in LA and that sort of thing. So I didn't have it all in my head when I was shooting it. And I got that because there was a lady, I used to work with Ridley Scott a good deal. And there was a producer that used to work with him that had left there and was working on that film. And she knew me. And so they needed somebody to do the second unit. She called me up and asked me if I would do it. And so it was interesting because I never met the director. I never met the fellow that was the DP on the first unit. Has now shot, after that, has shot a number of movies for Ridley. And he's a great guy. I spoke to him on the phone, and that was it. So I didn't really know, except I knew who was in it. I mean, the premise was wonderful. I mean, I shot in those bars, in New York, which were down in the meat packing district, with girls, dancing on the bars, and that was crazy fun. But Um, yeah, no, I didn't know. Nobody knows. Nobody knows. You hope for the best.
So, since you weren't necessarily with the other cast and crew in the sense of everybody filming together every day, do you still think you had memorable moments on set? And if you did, could you share one with us?
It's not a pleasant one.
Okay.
It had nothing to do. It had nothing to do with the shoot. But sometimes you find yourself shooting in crazy places. Okay. Now let me explain something. I used to shoot TV commercials. Okay, and I shot huge TV commercials. My main office was in Amsterdam. I had offices all over Europe, and I used to shoot all over the world. Okay, when you shoot, at least back when I used to shoot commercials, commercials are a little bit different today. It's an odd thing, but when I used to shoot commercials, everything was aspirational. Okay, I remember one time I was shooting some commercial, and a guy from the agency came and said, it's like, well, I said, why do we have all these silly computer screens sitting on these desks? And it was meant to be an office, and it's like, why do you have them? They were huge back then. And I said, why? And he said, because that's what people use, and we want people to feel like this is for them. I was like, no, people already know who they are and what their station is, and they want to be better. And so back then, we would shoot commercials that would elevate people, that would make people go like, wow, I want to be like that. And unfortunately, that would mean, okay, if you smoke that cigarette, or drink that beer or wear that shirt, you're a little bit closer to being like that. Okay. That's not really the way they think today, but that's not what my point of what I'm trying to make is that you would go to the most beautiful places in the world and shoot the most beautiful things and stuff and make it aspirational so that people would look at it and relate that to the product and then want to buy the product and that sort of thing. Well, movies are exactly the opposite. I used to say that a commercial was you would take an extraordinary person and put them in an extraordinary place, and that would shine things. Okay, but in a movie is usually different. Usually you take an average person and put them in the absolute pits of hell. And so then the audience goes, instead of, I wish that was me, they're going, oh my God, I'm glad that's not me. Now, how's he going to get out of that? And that's what makes great drama. Okay. How's he going to get out? Now, when I write and I have somebody in the pit of Hades, I will say, I will write down, okay, what would I do? I write it down on a Post-it note. I'll write down what I would do if I was in that situation. I'll write it down. I'll stick it on the screen. And then I'll say, okay, what would I do if I couldn't do that? I'll get like 6 things that I think that I would do to get out of that mess. I'll stick it on the screen. Those are the things that I'm not allowed to let that character do. If I let them do that, there's enough people that think like me because I'm just an average guy. And so they will think, oh, he should, she should. And if he does that, then the audience goes, oh, yeah, well, that's what I expected. I should be doing something else like washing my hair, as it gets very boring. So, what you want the audience to do is to look at it and go, don't do that. Are you crazy? So anyway, consequently, we would have to shoot in like rough places. We went to location scout at a building in New York. Okay. When we went, there was an undercover cop with us. And as we got out of the Suburban or whatever it was and started walking toward it, the guy was like, okay, don't look up. Don't look up. And it was a big, huge building. It was, in the projects. And later he told me there were some guys on top of the building staring at us. And apparently they were armed. Okay. And so we go in to the lobby, we go to the elevator, we get in the elevator. It's like shaking as it's going up. The ceiling is all burnt where people have taken the lighters and burn it and stuff. We go up to like, I don't know, like the 7th, the 9th floor, something like that. And there's still bars on the windows. They weren't to keep people from going in. They were to keep people from going out. And in this particular apartment that we shot in, there was a very scary set of people. And I asked no questions, just went in, did what I had to do, and I left. So that was bizarre. Not a happy story, but you know what? It's a human story.
Yeah, that's definitely, I would say that is definitely a memorable moment.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
survived it, and apparently the people on the rooftop were very curious about who we were, and they knew that the undercover cop guy was a cop.
that's insane. I guess they always have their telltales.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay, so just for everybody new tuning in, my name is Arianna. I am the producer and host, and we are live on Just TV. My guest today is Michael Givens, an accomplished producer, director, writer, actor, and cinematographer, as well as an acting coach. So, you recently completed production on a documentary. Can you tell us a little bit more about that? What you did, your role?
Absolutely. I was I was everything on that one. I was the producer, the director, the cinematographer. My wife was the production manager. We had no crew. The first 2 days of the shoot, we had crew, and that was the beginning of COVID, and everybody was scared to death of everybody. And so, unfortunately, I had to let everybody go. And so I traveled around the country. This movie is 3 episodes, and it's the story of the first 2 waves of Jewish immigration to America, and it's fascinating. And I ended up just traveling to different people all over America that would add to this story. Pretty much all of them were professors or rabbis, and it was a great story. I didn't know. I'm not Jewish. I'm a Christian. But when I was offered it by a man who had heard about me, who actually was not even in film, he just had this idea for the film. And he's Jewish, and his idea was that this would be a small film. It'll be like 20, 30 minutes. And he told me that, and I was like, well, we got to figure out how we make it an hour at least so that it feels like a movie. And so I went and did all my interviews. Okay. And because I have an acting school, I thought, well, I'll just get some of my acting students and we'll reenact some of the scenes, and use those as B-roll and cutaways and that sort of thing. Well, after I got through doing all the interviews, I put all of that stuff, the things that I thought had an opportunity to be in the film, in a timeline in Blackmagic software, okay, DaVinci. And I put it in there, and it was 11 and a half hours long. I cut it down to 9.5 hours. I called up my investor, and I said, I got a problem. I told him what it was, and he says, what are you going to do? And I said, well, I'm sure that I can cut it down to 4 hours. But if I was to cut it down to a 2-hour movie, and we showed it, that period went from 1654 to 1881. And I said, from the time period that we stopped studying, 1881, to today, nobody's told this story. So do you think if we put out a 2-hour film and people look at it and say, wow, that's really kind of cool, but I wish it had this, or I wish it had that, do you think anybody will go make it? And he looked at me and said, no, I don't think so. And I said, then it dies in my computer. And that's not fair. It's not fair to the story. And he said, no, what do you need? And I said, I need a little bit more money just to cut it into, an episodic, situation. So I did. He did. He loved it. And it's an eye opener. People look at it and they're like, whoa, wow. It is such a huge story. Because the huge story is that when the Jews came to America, the ones that went to the American South were welcomed with open arms. The people that went to the North weren't always so. In fact, you couldn't even be a Jew in Boston until after 1850. Couldn't even be there. Okay. There were more Jews in Charleston, South Carolina than there were in New York up until 1840. And things like that is just phenomenal. Well, the things that I learned and that anybody would learn that watches that, it's astounding. So that's playing on a streaming channel called Kyflix. And I'm hoping that when that run is done, we're going to get it in some other places. Like I'd love to see it on, you can imagine. But it's a really interesting thing. I've done a few documentaries, but that one I think is very cool. Because then what I did not use my acting students. There was no way. What are you going to do? I mean, the whole thing, the beginning of episode 1 to the end of episode 3 is about 3 hours and 45 minutes. And so what I did is I decided, well, I'll do it with paintings, with artwork. And so I started looking around for Jewish artwork. I found 5 paintings of Jewish home life during that period. 5. I can't do that long of a project with that many cutaways, those few cutaways. So then I decided, okay, well, I'll just make them in AI. That's the only way to do it. And so what I did is that depending on the time period, I would take whatever was a popular art movement of the time and create a piece of artwork that was reminiscent of the style of, say, Rembrandt or Caravaggio or Vermeer or whomever for a period. And it was amazing. I ended up making by myself, over 13,000 images. I didn't use all of them, but you have to make multiple images sometimes to get what you want. And sometimes you take a piece of this and a piece of that, and you put it together in Photoshop, and there you are. But it was a massive undertaking. Massive. Please look at it. It's called This Happy Land on Kyflix.
Wow, that's amazing to see all the innovation almost that she had to go through in this process.
It was great fun. I shot, it was funny though, because I would do it when I had time. I'd work on it when I had time, and I would go shoot other movies. But it was during the COVID period, and experiment or whatever that thing was that happened, and I'm very proud of it.
Absolutely. So you mentioned how you were going to get your acting students to do this with you. I'm curious about how you and your students, how you help them get into character.
Okay. All right. The way that I work is a little bit different. And I must say, this is what a lot of people say. Okay. But here is why mine is different. All right. When I was, gosh, I can't stand it when actors do this, when they talk about it. It's only when I was a kid, the Klieg lights were calling and I had to go to Hollywood. No. But when I was a kid, my brother gave me a book about hypnosis. And I was fascinated by it. Okay. And so I read the book, and then I read other things, and my brother and I would talk about, Criswell and the swinging pendulum and how to make that work and figure out whether somebody's lying or not and all that fun stuff as kids love to do. Then when I was in film school, and I was in film school first in Johnson City, Tennessee, then I went to film school in Santa Barbara, California, the Brooks Institute. And while I was there, I thought, oh my goodness, if I'm going to make films with actors, I really need to learn their language. And so I need to go to film school. I mean, I need to go to acting school. So the first acting school that I went to was a Lee Strasberg method class. And I was like, when I saw that, when they started talking about how you do relaxation, and I had read Maxwell Maltz's book, Psycho-Cybernetics, where he talks about the exact same thing, which he used to do he was a plastic surgeon. And he noticed there was something weird. It's like he would fix something on somebody, and he would think that would be it. And 6 months later, they're back wanting something else fixed, and then something else fixed. And he was finally realized, it's like, it's not anybody outside they're trying to please. They're not pleased themselves with themselves. And he came up with this relaxation thing that was almost exactly the same. I think he borrowed it from Lee Strasberg, who sort of borrowed it from, Stanislavski. And anyway, I borrowed it. Okay. But when I saw that, I said, oh my God, this is like a millimeter away from hypnosis. So I spent years figuring out how to incorporate hypnosis into method acting, because with method acting, you do sense memory, which is absolutely brilliant. You do effective memory, which is absolutely brilliant. But you can take that a step further. What do we do in method acting? We take things from our lives and we relive them. I mean, when I'm with an actor, and if if I'm directing them, it's up to them whether they want to work with me like this or not. I don't push it on anybody. My students, I push it on them, but they know when they come there that that's what we do. And so, like sometimes, we'll do a scene that we've had very little prep on, and I'll go up and whisper into somebody's ear. It says, you take, the most life-changing thing that ever happened to you. Okay, close your eyes. Think about what that was. What do you hear? What do you smell? What do you taste? What do you see? What do you feel? And I do it much slower than that and guide them through that. And then I'll put a trigger on something, hopefully, that they say. If you put it on something somebody else says in the scene, they might not say that. Or you give them a piece of action that they do. And then that trigger takes them to that exact moment. And the exact moment that I'm looking for is the moment of no return. In other words, there's absolutely nothing you can do to change this. And now you're soaked in that as you get through it. Now that's method acting. Okay. That's method acting. And I personally think it works beautifully. And it's the greatest thing you can do for film. It works for the stage as well, of course, but Meisner works really good for the stage as well. And the reason for that, Meisner is like, you get a lot of energy off of your scene mate, but sometimes if your scene mates, cost a lot of money, your scene mate, when we do your close up, is a piece of tape on the corner of the mat box, or a tennis ball on the end of a C-stand. I don't know how much energy you get out of that, but if you mix hypnosis with this, oh, it doesn't even have to be your life. I developed a thing called deep character identification, and I sort of ripped it off from the Russians that created a thing called deep trance identification, which they've used for a very long time with all sorts of people, not just actors, but all sorts of artists, scientists, anybody in any business at all can improve their business by doing that. Okay. But when I do it with actors, I can help them to identify with the character that they're playing, but they can identify with an animal, with a tree, with a storm, but they can identify with anything. But particularly if they are playing, say, a historical person, it's just endless what they can do. I know we don't have a whole lot more time, and I would be happy to tell you a whole lot more about this, but it is a solid game changer. So that's what I do at my school, which is called MGA, Acting and Film Institute.
No, that is very, very interesting, and I feel like that's definitely a unique approach than probably anyone else has. So,
yeah. Yes.
Awesome. So, since we are almost out of time, is there anything else you would like the viewers to know? Your social medias, any upcoming projects that you would like to mention?
Well, I'm just finishing writing a script right now that is a Victorian thriller, and I've got some very big names of people that are very interested in being involved with this project, and it's coming along really well, really, really well, and I'm excited about it. It'll also open some eyes. But I have that. My social media, michaelgivens.com is a good start. IMDb, I'm R. Michael Givens instead of just Michael. There's some other Michael Givenses out there. I had a Michael Givens come in as an actor for me in a casting session one time, and he had actually used the same font on his name that I had used when I was a camera assistant back in the dark ages. I thought it was they were pulling a joke on me.
You were like, oh my gosh, this is me. What am I doing? That is so funny. Well, Thank you so much for joining me today. And thank you to our viewers for watching Aim for the Stars. Be sure to catch my other episodes on Jess TV and on Roku. Thank you very much. Bye, everyone.